What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the 10-7 MMA Show. We are back after an insane weekend at UFC 305 in Perth, Australia. And we are going to start right away with the main event. And the main event's got so many implications, especially for your boy and your teammate, Sean Strickland. So this was just so wild. So, Justin, what are your first thoughts of this main event? Because I'm blown away. Let me just turn it over to you. I want to hear the professional opinion first.
Well, I mean, it was a great fight. It was a very competitive fight, and obviously until the finish. Adesanya's Adesanya, man. He's one of the greatest to ever do it. Unfortunately, time catches up with us, and there's been a pattern, with guys that apply a lot of pressure. You look at Sean Strickland, you look at Jan Block, the Polish guy. I can't ever
Blachowicz.
Blachowicz. You look at him, they apply pressure to Izzy, and that's really how you take a style. And Dricus did awesome. Not only did he get the win, he got a great rear naked choke finish. I did not see a submission win coming. I thought he was going to grit out a decision with that gritty wrestling and gritty cage pressure, but congratulations, and still just like I predicted.
It is just like you predicted. But would you agree that Izzy was winning the fight until he wasn't? I mean, winning the fight until basically he got caught. And no, what did you think? Or did you disagree?
I'm not going to agree or disagree. I thought it was a competitive fight. I thought some judges could have it going either way, leading up to that point. Really solidifying the win with a finish is huge for Dricus because, he doesn't get it's not like he's a finishing machine. It's not like he's getting knockout after knockout or submission after submission. But to go in there and submit Israel Adesanya, some say the greatest middleweight of all time. I don't agree with that, but some do put him up there in that category. It is incredible. Sean Strickland should be up next and needs to be up next after that.
Oh, he is, and it's been announced. So that we're going to talk about that. That we're definitely going to get to that next matchup because that's coming. I don't know when, but that's coming, and that's going to be a great one. So when I watched the fight, I actually thought, and this is really cool because I've been watching a bunch of interviews after the fact, especially of Izzy. One thing that I really respect about Izzy coming out of the fight is he has said over and over he was in the best shape of his life, the best training camp, felt better than ever. So basically, giving no excuses whatsoever for the loss. I thought he looked super sharp, really composed, despite having that little bit of an emotional kind of meltdown, you could say, at the press conference where he cried a little bit. I thought he looked so focused and so dialed in. My take on it was that he looked better than ever, but it was essentially Dricus weathered the storm, did great as well, had his combinations, but I felt like Izzy was a superior fighter. But eventually, all the takedown attempts, which he had amazing takedown defense, I think it started to add up in terms of making Izzy exhausted. Dricus was exhausted too. But the problem is that once Izzy got too tired, I think his takedown defense was compromised. That's how it happened. That's how he made the mistake, and that's how Dricus got the arm under the neck, and got the rear naked choke. Is that a fair assessment, or am I missing something?
No, it's a great assessment, man. And that's the thing with Dricus is it's crazy. Every time I watch this guy fight, that's why I've bet against him so many times. After the first round, he always looks so tired. He looks exhausted. He looks sloppy. He looks sluggish. But for somehow he keeps putting it together, man. And that's why, like I said before the show or before the fight, I was like, hey, I've went against Dricus every time so far leading up to his championship reign. And this time I'm like, you know what? He's proven his worthiness. He's proven that he's tough. He's proven he's in shape. He doesn't look like he's in shape. And when I say he doesn't look like he's in shape, it looks to me in the fight like he's tired. His hands he looks sloppy, but he always is going forward. He's always pushing the pace. It's just a style that works for him, man. And his relentless pressure and his relentless, his takedown offense, it's exhausting to defend for that long of that period of a time, man. And hats off to him. Dricus, I didn't really care for his style prior to the Izzy fight, but then, he beats Robert Whittaker, which I was like, holy shit, wow. Then he beats Sean Strickland. It's like, holy shit, he beats Sean. Now he beats Israel Adesanya. Again, I don't think Israel's one of the greatest of all time, but I know some people do argue that he is. In order for me to consider you the greatest of all time, you got to have that fall off your championship reign like Izzy did, but then you have to put it all back together and get it back, kind of like George St. Pierre did. Unfortunately, Izzy wasn't able to tonight. I think he's great. I think he's one of the best, but it just wasn't his night, man. And, he's getting old. Father Time catches up to all of us, and the relentless pressure and pace by Dricus is really hard to match.
I heard some people talking about the fact if you look at his age that maybe influenced his chin. Do you find any credibility in that maybe his chin is a little bit weaker than it used to be and some of those shots wouldn't have affected him as badly, or did you not find that to be the case?
I wouldn't say age, I say experience weakens your chin, man. I guess age probably is a contributing factor too, but I think mostly experience. Like, think of all the rounds he's done in the last 15 years. Think of all the fights he's had in the last 15 years. He's fought some of the best fighters in the world. He's fought, Alex Pereira before getting into the UFC. He was kickboxing, one of the best kickboxers in the world. This guy's taken damage over years. And unfortunately, as we get older, that shit adds up.
Now, in terms of, I know this is what you picked and what you predicted. How do you feel about the outcome? I mean, would you have been more excited to see Izzy come back and reclaim the throne, or do you think this was an awesome ending and you're super psyched how it turned out in the future of the division?
I'll be honest. I really didn't care who won or lost. I just wanted an entertaining fight, and that's what we got. I'm an Israel fan. I think he's a great fighter. I think he's a great role model for up and coming fighters. He's an entertainer. I know I was in the gym this morning, and guys were talking shit about his walkout. Oh, he's dancing. He's doing this and that. He's like, dude, like, listen, we're entertainers. You know what I mean? Like, we're at the end of the day, we are fighters, but we're entertainers as well. And I love that shit. I think it's a great path for kids to be able to look up to this guy and see him as that. But on the other hand, I really wanted Sean Strickland to get the rematch with Dricus. And obviously, Izzy wins. He doesn't get that rematch right away, or maybe he does for contendership. But now that Sean's fighting for the title, that's, for me, best case scenario.
Yeah, it's okay. So I'll tell you my thoughts too. I remember I'd kind of played out what I thought would be cool if Izzy won. I'm kind of bummed for Izzy just because I feel like it's sad. He is getting up there in age, still, I mean, relatively young. He looked amazing to me. So maybe he's got a lot of years in him left. He's not retiring. He said he's gonna come back. But I would have thought it would have been cool, especially when he was being so hated on for so long, getting insulted like crazy. People, the whole crowd turned on him. And then it seemed like he was coming back into the good graces of the crowd, whatever that's worth, right? Maybe some people don't care. But I thought it would have been such a cool comeback story. But I do think this is also a very fascinating outcome again because of the rematch with Sean Strickland. I think that's really cool. I'm super excited that Izzy's not retiring. I think this is going to be one of the. I don't even know how long it's been since Izzy has fought in a non-title contention fight. It's probably been like 6, 7, 8 fights. I don't even know. So this is going to be. I think it's going to be super cool to see him come back, headline maybe a regular fight, maybe for the top title contention. Who knows? It could be against the loser of Khamzat versus Whitaker. I could see that, right? Imagine if Whitaker wins, he's going to fight the winner of Dricus versus Strickland, and then Izzy goes in and fights Khamzat, or vice versa. He has a rematch, perhaps a three-way rematch with Robert Whitaker. You can't deny that. That could be pretty cool too. So I think there's some interesting things that could happen. I really want to see Izzy come back. And I want to see if he can do it. I want to see if he can climb back up after being knocked down a peg and see what he's got. Once again, I thought, last thing I want to talk about, the sportsmanship at the end. I mean, we saw Izzy get heated. We saw all this stuff. And then Dricus went out of his way, came up to him and told him what a legend he is, how much he respects him. And even Izzy said a lot of positive things about Dricus after the match. One of the things that he said in particular was like, just remember, we've done a lot for Africa. Me, Usman, and what's it called? Ngannou. Francis. We've really brought Africa and Dricus. We've brought Africa to the center. He said that. He added the and Dricus. So now he's including Dricus in the lineage of African champions. I thought that was so cool. So what a sign of sportsmanship. Dricus said at the end, hey, maybe me and Izzy won't be friends. We're not like the same type of people, but we have a ton of respect. And how can you not respect him? How did that make you feel? Because that pumps me up. I love that more than anything to see, especially because the beef wasn't fake. It wasn't fake. And then they're like, we're all tight. It was like, hey, we had our issues. We said what we said. But at the end of the day, we can bury the hatchet and show each other maximum love and respect because we've had this incredible battle. What do you feel when you see something like that?
Yeah, I love it, man. It's something I love to see in the sport. I mean, I love the fight buildup. Conor McGregor is notorious for it, talking so much trash, after about all his opponents, and then after the fight, showing nothing but respect. Listen, it doesn't matter how you feel about someone. Me and Carl Deaton, we exchanged a lot. I don't get heated in fights a lot, but again, that Carl Deaton matchup I had a couple of years ago, we were definitely heated, going into this fight. We definitely wanted to hurt each other. But after the fight, it's just like, whatever, man. Carl's a tough dude. He got to the UFC, after beating me. Congratulations. Like I said, I'm not going to be inviting him over for Christmas dinner. But I got to respect him as a fighter, and I feel Dricus and Izzy are in a similar situation, man. It's when you go toe to toe with somebody and you have a chance in front of millions of people to hurt and inflict pain on somebody, and you're unable to. Unfortunately, Dricus was the better guy that night, and Izzy knows that, man. And when you have all those emotionals come out in the cage, and fly, and your emotions are flying through your fists, flying through your takedowns. Like every takedown is emotional, every punch is emotional, every kick is emotional. Every time you hit somebody, whether they block it or not, you're giving that you're passing that emotion off, and that's why the old saying, fighting solves everything. I'm not going to say it solves everything, but it sure solves a lot. If you go hand to hand with somebody and you have a good bang out brawl fight, now if I just whip somebody's ass, all right, that guy might still have animosity towards me. But if they give me some damage and I give them some damage, and we're going to go back and forth, by the end of the fight, all our energy is gone, all our emotion is flat. And I love seeing the respect between two incredible athletes like these guys.
Me too. And I think that's a great positive message for young folks out there as well. You do your thing, you get in there, not saying people should get into fights or whatnot, but like you can have that mutual level of respect, especially if, it was such a good fight. It was so dope. I don't know what the bonuses were or anything like that, but that was incredible. Congratulations to Dricus. And as I mentioned before, oh, sorry, I forgot to put up the title there, Dricus Beats Izzy. As I mentioned before, if you listen to the interviews of Dricus, he is a really cool guy, really funny guy, especially the MMA Guru interview I thought was great, and you can really see his personality. He's awesome. So congrats to him as the champ. Like I said, I would have loved to see Izzy reclaim the throne. Plus, Dricus is young. He could have bounced back, but hey, it is what it is. It worked out the way it worked out. Congratulations to the champ. And now on to the next, which is Strickland versus Dricus. So this is wild because it's basically already been announced by Dana White. Who knows when this will happen? Maybe December, maybe that December card that Conor is supposedly trying to get on. We'll see. I think that could be a good timeline. All right, Justin, what are your thoughts? Now, just as a caveat, I know people sometimes are like, oh, well, you're the teammate, so of course you're going to say this. But like, let's get into, I know who you're picking in the fight. Let's talk specifics. How do you see this rematch of Strickland versus Dricus unfolding from a stylistic standpoint?
I think Sean's going to make the proper adjustments not to make it such a close fight. I thought Sean won the first fight to begin with. So and it's really hard. It doesn't matter what sport you're in, whether you're playing football, baseball, wrestling, MMA. It's really, really hard to beat somebody as good as Sean Strickland twice in a row. And, like I said, the game plan is going to be very simple. Sean's going to be in his Philly shell. He's going to throw a lot of teep kicks, and he's going to walk Dricus down. I think he's going to have Eric Nixick's going to make some minor adjustments coming forward. But I have Sean Strickland all the way, and I'm not just saying that because he's my teammate. I'm just saying that because while Dricus is preparing for Izzy, Sean has been preparing for Dricus since he lost, since Costa. He's been preparing for this fight. He's in the gym this morning. He's in the gym this evening. I saw him working on Saturday. I talked about he was at wrestling practice at 10 o'clock. Then he was drilling at 11 with some guys on the wall. And then at noon, while I'm running a class, he asked me for some space on the mat so he can continue drilling. This guy's been preparing for this rematch since the Costa fight. Like, Dricus is going to take some time off, and, as he should, because he took damage. He's going to take some time off, reevaluate what he has to do, and then start preparing for Sean. Sean's already 10 steps ahead of him. Sean's been preparing for Dricus or Izzy since he beat Costa. And that's going to be a really hard man to beat.
Interesting. Okay, so I want to show you some comments here. So, guys, Tehran saying, I love Sean, but I think DDP beats him again. We've got Anakin jumping in, saying, I think DDP wins again. So, guys, in the comments, in the chat, I'd love to hear why you think that, and maybe we can bounce it off Justin, because I'd be curious to know Justin's response to what your thoughts are as opposed to why DDP wins again. I think me personally, and obviously Justin here is the expert, and he has, knows Sean backwards and forwards, trains with him all the time, right? For me, I just think it's going to be an incredible battle. I don't even really know what to expect. The other interesting bits is Dricus, is he leveling up massively from this training camp, from dealing with Izzy, and how does that translate to a matchup against Sean versus Sean? You would imagine Sean's been specifically focused on DDP, so probably he's going to have more effective training in that same period of time. But I don't know. I don't know how it's going to play out. And Tehran has responded in the chat. He said he thinks DDP has his number. If you could elaborate a little bit more, I'd love to know exactly what you mean. By the way, Sean said in the first fight, I think he said he got like an eye poke or some damage to his eye, right, early on. And he said after that he was compromised, and that's why the fight looks so different after the first round. Yeah, Justin, talk about that a little bit. What do you know about that eye, the damage to the eye, and how that impacted Sean?
Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was a poke but I remember he was bleeding from one of his eyes, and you don't see Sean get hit very much. Yeah, he got cut, and it might have been a good punch. It might have just been a solid kick. But when you look at damage, you see Sean bleeding from his eye and DDP not. Some of the judges take that into account, and unfortunately, they're not going to score it as a round basis. Say he got cut in the third round, all right, well, he won that round. They see it in the fourth round and the fifth round, and the more it bleeds, the more they're seeing that DDP wins. Sean is going to be a barrel of bad news for DDP. I'm sure he's going to make the right adjustments. His pressure, his relentless pressure, I think it's just going to be too much, man. And like I said, again, I thought he won the first one, and I think he's going to take this down again, man. It's like the guy is as we're speaking right now, he's at Extreme Couture training right now for this fight. DDP's recovering right now. Sean's training. That's going to be the difference maker.
When do you think Strickland, in from your guys' camp's perspective, when do you think I imagine he just wants to fight as soon as possible because he's probably ready to fight tomorrow, right? But when do you think your team is going to try and angle to get this fight done and going?
I think that Sean's going to be like, all right, I'm ready as soon as Dricus is ready. I'm ready. So yeah, it could be as soon as November or even December. Wow. Sean, there's people talk about MMA fighters, and I know I talk about Sean a lot. It's just because why.
Well, I think we lost Justin. All right. We'll wait for Justin to jump back in. Justin, I don't know if you can hear us, but you're going to have to rejoin. Okay. And let's see, Anakin. Sean style works with everyone in the division, but DDP knows Sean style and can overcome it. He knows his style, I guess, from the standpoint of he's already fought him. I guess the question will be, the real question is, hey, I'm just going over Anakin's comment about Sean's style. Yeah, DDP knows the style, but I think the question will be, hey, is it going to be a different Sean, because now he's coming in, his vision won't be compromised. Is that going to be a major difference? And also, it did look like this is my recollection, but when I rewatched that first round, it did feel pretty dominant in Strickland's favor. And while DDP has been lasting quite well throughout the rounds, we know Sean at the end of the day, his cardio is probably the top in the division and his endurance in general. So if we could replicate that first round and extend it out over the fight, barring, the blood getting in the eye or whatnot, it feels to me like Strickland would have an advantage, but I guess we'll see. Let's see. Tron's got another comment here. I hope Sean doesn't let DDP trash talk to him again. I don't know. I'm not even so interested about the trash talk this time. I think we just want to see a more decisive finish. That would be really satisfying to see somebody get a finish versus a decision. It's going to be a heck of a fight. And the trash talk is going to be good. DDP is so underrated, by the way, as a trash talker. What do you think about it? His trash talking, or really, he's just basically, I feel like he just tells the truth and tells it how it is. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree, man. You're talking about making Sean Strickland cry on camera. You're talking about making Israel Adesanya cry on camera. This guy has figured out how to get under people's skin, and he's really good at it. I'm telling you, I really like DDP, man. I didn't really care for his style at first. Like I said, he looked slow, lethargic. He always looks tired. But, man, He keeps beating good guys. He keeps proving me wrong time and time again. So how can I not like the guy, man? It's like, it's hard for me to root against him against Sean because I want him to win. But when it comes to my teammate Sean Strickland, obviously I want the gym to win. I want Sean to win. But, I'm a fan of DDP. I'm looking forward to this fight.
How crazy is it? And then if you think about it, if Sean comes back and pulls it off, think about how many times the belt has changed in this division. Gone from Izzy to Alex to Izzy to Sean to DDP. It's just so wild. And then if it goes back to Sean, and then what if Izzy comes back? It's so crazy. But a lot of fun in this division. A lot of really cool stuff. Yes,
that's something that needs to be talked about too when people talk about the greatest of all time. Let's look at guys that have defended their belt over and over and over and over, because it's one thing to get to the top of the mountain. It's one thing to become a champion, but to stay the champion. That's, to me, what makes the greatest of all time. When you talk about guys like John Jones, you talk about guys like George St. Pierre, you talk about guys like Anderson Silva. It's incredible feat to be the UFC champion. Obviously, it's fucking very few people have ever done it. But to continue to be the UFC champion, Alex Volkanovski, what's his name that Alex beat, the Hawaiian, Max
Oh, Max
Holloway.
Holloway. Yeah.
You like, dude, like these are bad guys. Habib, unfortunately, I don't consider him of the greatest of all time because he only had like three title defenses. Like when you get up there in some big title defenses, that's to me what makes the greatest of all time. Whether you win the belt and lose the belt, that's one thing. But title defenses are to me what makes a champion great.
And it's so crazy because like you can really see now as the sport continues to evolve and grow, you can really see how difficult it is. Like Izzy is such an amazing champion, and yet he's had so much difficulty. Just the competition maybe is getting harder and hard. I mean, it's just wild. Anybody can win the belt potentially on a given day. So the odds of these consecutive successful title defenses back to back in a row over and over, it's just becoming slimmer and slimmer and harder in a lot of ways. So yeah, it's so difficult. I mean, it's probably hard back then too, but you're right. This really shows that we can see somebody as talented as Izzy or in some of these other divisions like Alex Volkanovski have this great title defense run, and then now he loses. It's incredibly hard. We have to remember to give tremendous respect to those people like Mighty Mouse as well, right? We can't forget him, who have had all these crazy consecutive title defenses. Absolutely unbelievable. Okay, super cool. So that's the middleweight division. Now we go to my favorite pick of the fight night of the UFC event, excuse me, where I switched at the last minute to Dan Hooker, and I was right. Well, I'm wrong so many times. I can't really get too excited about it, but it was pretty cool that he pulled it off. Now, but actually, before I say anything, first thoughts. What did you think of how he fought?
I'll be honest, I didn't see this fight. I
Okay,
did not see. This is one fight I have not seen.
let
I
me
know he
talk.
won, but that's all I know.
Let me talk about it a little bit. I thought
Sure.
it was amazing because I thought he was very measured. He kept his distance. He wasn't rushing in. He was extremely patient. His takedown defense was phenomenal, and his striking just looked amazing. Mateus Gamrot was in there, but he wobbled the heck out of him several times. I don't know. I just thought I Dan Hooker looked like a new fighter, a new reborn fighter, and just absolutely crisp, and just everything was clicking. And then he won. He beat a top 5 guy. I think people are talking about him going up against Charles Oliveira next. He might be one fight away from a title shot. I mean, how incredible is that? So many people counted Dan Hooker out. What do you think about that aspect, about this amazing comeback story? Getting dropped out of the, remember him going up against Michael Chandler, going up nearly, basically almost beating Dustin Poirier. They had a razor close decision, and then kind of falling from grace, working his way back up, and now he's in the top 5, one shot. I mean, what do you think about that story?
Fucking love it, man. There's nothing I love more than a good comeback story, especially someone like Dan Hooker. I've never heard anybody say a bad thing about this guy. The guy works his ass off, and just to go show the mental toughness of taking some losses and being able to come back and reestablish yourself as a fighter, especially with the evolution of the sport of how everyone's evolving. Gamrot was supposed to be the next big thing, and Dan Hooker steps up and says, not today, and he gets the W over a big name and puts him in the top 5.
And everybody was saying this was a nightmare matchup for him.
I
I mean,
thought it was too.
I was too initially. And really, what did I do? Right? I tried to take the psychological angle and listen to how he was speaking, and he was sounding so confident and so amped up and ready to go, and had saying how much he'd improved. So that made me excited. That made me feel positive about him, and he pulled it off. But I mean, just imagine what he's come through and been through. And I think there's so much he's been through that nobody's even talked about. He mentioned as well during the pandemic in New Zealand, he wasn't able to go, they weren't allowing him to even go to a gym, even like lockdown private sessions. So he was like running up and down his street, training in his garage. He got a random call to fight Islam, took it with barely any training and got smoked. But he's like, you have no idea all this stuff that's been going on. Now he's got a new contract. I heard he's got a pretty big contract too in the lightweight division. So just what an incredible comeback story. All right, let's take some comments here because people are talking about what they want to see. And by the way, Dan Hooker's got to be one of the coolest fighters in the UFC. Like, you just can't not like him. He's fearless. He's hilarious. He's just the best. All right, Hooker versus Gaethje has to be next. This is Teron Brown. We got some other ideas, but what are your thoughts on this matchup next?
I mean, it's an exciting matchup. It's striker's delight here. I mean, Gaethje's dangerous against everybody, man. Like, I would love to see the matchup, but Gaethje's coming off a loss. Does that warrant a title shot if Dan Hooker wins? I think a title shot, he'll have to fight somebody that's coming off a win or a couple wins to solidify himself as a title contender. He can't beat a former champ that's coming off a loss.
Oof. Okay. I wouldn't be mad about it if they did it, because Gaethje lost to Holloway. Before that, he beat Dustin. He was supposed to be up next for a title contention shot. He kind of got slid in there for UFC 300 to make a super fight. I don't know, but I get what you're saying. Okay, we got some other ideas as well. Dan versus Charles, which I mentioned. People are saying Charles Oliveira versus Dan Hooker. Let's just talk about that for a second. That's a very, very, very dangerous fight, right? Of course, we got Charles with the amazing ground game, but still the incredible Muay Thai. What do you think about that matchup?
Against Charles Oliveira, man, I think that's a really tough matchup for Dan. I think that Dan will have just as good striking, maybe a little better, maybe a little worse, give or take on the given day who shows up. But I think the grappling advantage will be obviously significant for Charles Oliveira. And with how he gets cracked and he'll pull guard, almost lure guys into a false sense of security, I think that'll be hard. I think if Dan cracks him and he falls down, he's going to jump in for the finish. Let alone, but to avail that, Charles might be setting him up to get some grappling in.
Now, if the fight stays on the feet, let's say, right, Charles will do that thing where he goes, pulls guard, hey, come in. They don't come in, he gets back up, and they keep striking. If they keep it on the feet, I feel like Dan Hooker's got a slight striking advantage. Do you agree or do you disagree?
I'm not going to say I agree or disagree, to be honest. I think it's a coin flip fight. I think whoever shows up on that night will have the striking advantage. I think these guys are both incredible strikers. We got Charles Oliveira, he's knocked out. Mike Chandler, he's dropped Gaethje. This guy can fight. This guy can kickbox. And if he's on his game and Dan isn't, he's going to be the better striker, and vice versa. If Dan is on his game and Charles isn't. Now, if they both show up, I think it's just going to be a striker's delight, man. I think it's going to be an even striking matchup, but I give the significant grappling advantage to Charles Oliveira.
Man, what exciting times for the UFC lightweight division. Just to have Dan Hooker now back in title contention picture and be potentially matched up against Charles Oliveira or Justin Gaethje or all these other guys could be incredible. Last one that is mentioned here by Anakin, Dustin Poirier 2, maybe as a finishing fight or a fight right before retirement for Dustin Poirier. You have an interest in that or no?
Yeah, man. Actually, there's not really a guy that you could put Dan Hooker against and be like, oh, I hate that matchup. I think all these are great matchups. These are all top 5 guys. These are some of the best guys in the division. Dan Hooker has proven himself once again as one of the best fighters in the division. So anybody the UFC decides to match him up against, I'm going to be fine with.
All right, fair enough. Such amazing fight. Congratulations, Dan Hooker. We are all stoked in the UFC fan community. Amazing. All right, now moving on to this flyweight matchup. Did not see this coming because I think Steve Erceg is such a talented fighter. A lot of people think he did beat Pantoja. He does not, by the way. When people bring that up, he's like, nah, I lost. He's like, I watched, I didn't do enough. I should have done more. I lost. And that's it. I'm moving on. Love his attitude. He's so humble. He's so awesome. I was definitely favoring him against Kai Kara-France, but Kai Kara-France, what a legend. One of the few guys in the flyweight division to consistently get knockouts. Did you get a chance to see this finishing sequence in the first round?
I did not. Oh, in the first round. Wow, he finished him in the first round. All right, bad.
Yeah, he finished him in the first round with a knockout, or I don't know if it was knockout or TKO, but like he got an amazing strike in there, jumped on him, and Erceg was out for the count. Woke up, was like, all right, well, I guess that's how it goes. But it was an incredible fight. Now, by the way, I want to talk about this in the flyweight division in particular. We don't see a lot of knockouts. This is my sort of like math/scientific made up theory, but I imagine the reason why we don't see that nearly as many knockouts in flyweight division is because probably the variation in skull thickness and like general like head strength from a smaller person to like a big heavyweight giant is probably not as big as the strength differential like when you get much bigger, right? So it's like your skulls are still about as strong or still like pretty strong, but you're punching with that much less force and power. So that's why there's so many fewer knockouts. I'm guessing it's something along those lines. Have you ever talked to your coaches about that, or have people talked about why that is the case, that there's so many less knockouts in flyweight?
Mostly just because of the power differential. You're exactly right. When you go to the PI, the UFC PI, and they have a punching thing on the wall, like the power difference from a flyweight to a heavyweight is just insane. The numbers are off the charts. And unfortunately, you trade one with one. These guys are always in great shape. They're always going at a high pace. And then as you go up, I feel the pace slows down, but there's definitely more knockouts at the higher weights.
Now, I think it's so cool that Kai Kara-France, even though I was rooting for Steve Erceg and I was picking him, I think it is really cool that he won because, there's another cool thing, right? The city kickboxing team did quite well. Dan Hooker and Kai Kara-France won, even though Izzy came up short, but Izzy had a great fight. So I think they did a tremendous job overall in getting their fighters ready for this fight week. I know it's got to be tough to have 3 fighters on the main card for the head coach. I can't even imagine. I think Eric's done that before, right?
Yeah.
But they did a tremendous job. And I think it's pretty cool to have somebody who might be having a title shot, maybe in the next fight or the fight thereafter, that has KO power, right? That's exciting for the fans. Are you a fan of Kai Kara France?
I mean, any flyweight that can knock other flyweights out, I'm a fan of. You know, you look at the former champ Figueroa, man. Like, dude, that guy had knockout power. I was a big fan of him. You know, and it's anybody that can provide knockouts, I am a fan of, and I will stick behind this. And that's the thing. The flyweight division is at risk right now. I feel the flyweight division is at risk for being cut from the UFC again. And if they don't start putting guys together like Kai Kara France that can knock guys out, Dana White's going to cut that division out quick.
Now, I also did see, talking about the flyweight division, I did see that apparently Muhammad Mokaev posted on Twitter, on his Twitter account, signed, but nobody said anything as to what that means or what he hasn't clarified either. I think he's coming back to the UFC is what he seems to be insinuating. So maybe the flyweight division is sticking around, but imagine if we get Muhammad Mokaev back in the mix, maybe they'll match him up against Kai Kara France. That'd be an interesting fight. Obviously it's a bit of a grappler versus striker situation, but Kai Kara France has got a pretty good ground game as well. So anyways, I guess we'll see how that unfolds. And then the other thing that was thrown out, who threw this out? Anakin. Steve Erceg versus Manel Kopp next. That would be a dope fight. That would be a striker's delight right there for sure. And Manel Kopp, I wonder what the heck Manel Kopp would say about Steve Erceg. It's like, to trash Steve Erceg, you kind of have to be a complete jerk because he's literally the nicest human being on the planet. But I guess we'll see what happens with that. By the way, I want to throw up a comment here. Tehran is saying, I've seen a lot of idiots saying Izzy is washed, even though, and they even compared him to Tony Ferguson. That's bonkers.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Where Toran, put in the comments where you've been seeing those comments or who said that. That's crazy. Izzy looked amazing. He looked amazing. He just got worn down. I think that's all it is. You can only defend the takedown so many times when somebody's going to be as relentless as Dricus, and you're going to get tired out. And then it's just one mistake. I mean, I'm talking like you're the expert, obviously, but right? Isn't that the case? If somebody's on your back, make one little mistake when you're tired and they slip it in.
Absolutely, man. And defending takedown after takedown after takedown is beyond exhausting, to say the least.
Yeah, no, Izzy is definitely not washed. Insane. And we see, yeah, exactly. Izzy looked good. Yeah, of course, obviously. Izzy looked amazing. I thought Izzy was going to win. It was a close fight, but I thought Izzy was going to pull it off. And then Dricus got him on the ground. And I thought he was in trouble there when that happened, just because of how late in the game it was. And you could see he was tired. But, oh, man, it is what it is. All right. Let's move it along to the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson presser. I think Justin got logged off, but he's going to join back on in a second. All right. So I don't know if you guys saw this Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson press conference, but I want to talk about this a little bit because it looked like this fight is indeed scheduled and taking place in November. All right, Justin's joining. All right, Justin, we're back out. So now we've moved on from that last topic. We're into a little bit of influencer boxing, if you will. Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. Did you get a chance to see this press conference?
Yeah, I did.
All right, let's hear your thoughts.
I almost feel it's staged. You know, Jake Paul I mean, you're talking shit to arguably one of the most dangerous boxers, heavyweight boxers of all times, one of the most feared men of all times, to say, oh, Mike Tyson backed out because he had a bellyache or a tummy ache. It's just like, I know you're trying to sell a fight, and I know and you know what? And this is why I think that Jake Paul is a stage, because he goes on in the presser to say, like, fuck you, New York, oh, a bunch of Democrats, bunch of this, bunch of that. I think he's accepting the heel role in this. Obviously, everyone wants Tyson to come in and smash Jake Paul. They want him to come in and knock him out. So I think Jake Paul's embracing that and says, you know what, everyone wants me to lose. Fuck everybody. This is how we're going to sell this fight. Mike Tyson is the hero. I'm the heel. I'm going to accept that role. I'm going to trash talk Mike. I'm going to bash him about everything that's civil. And I'm going to bash the city of New York, too, because I want everyone to tune in to watch me get my ass. But in turn, I'm 30 years old or 28 years old. I'm going to beat this old man's ass.
Yeah, so Lane said the presser was very cringe. It was a little cringy. I actually don't think Jake is that cringy. I think sometimes he does great trash talking. Here's the reason why I thought it felt cringy to me, is that he was trying to talk smack, and then he was also going back and forth being like, yeah, Mike Tyson, you were good 20 years ago, but you're not good anymore, so I'm going to show you guys in November. which is like, okay, it's a lot of people are saying this fight is nonsense because Mike Tyson's too old. So it was a bit bizarre that you'd be bringing that up because that hurts your case in terms of the legitimacy of this fight. It was very strange. And then later on, he'd be like, yeah, Mike's a legend. This is a very dangerous fight. That's why I took it, to shut up all the haters. It was like, but you just said. So I think he's having a little bit of issues just trying to think of things to talk smack about, but then also still boost it up and make it seem like a valid fight. Whether it is or isn't, I'm not necessarily the best judge of that. I still think this seems to be a dangerous fight to me. I know you kind of disagree because of the age. You also think it's a major risk to Mike Tyson, as you mentioned before. But anyways, that was the part that seemed off. And then if you look at Mike Tyson throughout, I'm going to show you guys some clips. Mike Tyson just doesn't seem to be bothered by any of it. You know, they're going back and forth and he's kind of laughing and joking around, and he just doesn't seem to be riled up by it. And the part in particular that I want to show you guys at the very end here, let me pull this up. Oh, it's not in this clip. Did you see Jake shoved Mike Tyson?
Yeah, I did. And I saw Mike kind of punch him back or punch him in the chest back or something.
Not even punch him back. He was like laughing about it. He went back and he was cracking up, and then he just kind of like threw his hand out in a playful manner. It was so weird. Like it was like two kids play fighting at the park. So that part also seemed really bizarre. Not saying it's fixed per se or staged as you're kind of alluding to, but I don't know. It just seemed weird, and that seemed cringy to me. I want to see.
This is a dangerous fight for Mike, man. If it's a real fight, it's dangerous, man, because Mike being 60 years old, he's lost that kill. When you see Mike in his prime back in the 80s, man, dude, the look in his face, just that death stare, like Mike Tyson could break glass by staring through it, man. He's terrifying. And now to see him like, oh, whatever, I'm smiling, having a good time, like that tells me that he lost his kill, and that makes this fight very dangerous for him.
Okay, we got a couple other comments. Lane says, LOL, Mike Tyson was good 35 years ago, not 20. Yeah. I think 20, he was probably still pretty good at 38, I'm sure. Okay, I agree. I hope Mike Tyson starches him. Point being, Jake doesn't even really know when. Right, yeah. And then Pern says here, he still is beyond most men, but he is 58. Yeah, I guess a lot of times when I think about Jake Paul, I think about if I were going to go do what he's doing, right? Because he's kind of like a non-fighter that fell in love with fighting later in life, obviously at a much younger age than me, but still. So I imagine, would I ever go in there and step in against Mike Tyson? Hell no. He would annihilate me, right? Like, even if I did a training camp of a year in boxing, it'd be insane. Granted, like, I'm not in my 20s anymore. But so that's how I imagine it. Like, it still seems terrifying to me. I imagine you look at it from a different vantage point. You're a professional fighter. It's different. But I do think Jake is kind of like a regular person just getting in there and training. So that's why I still find it interesting. I just hope that it's a legit fight and nobody comes away with any serious injuries, Mike Tyson in particular. All right, let's just go through a couple more comments here. Oh, we already showed this one. I love the idea he had of legends fighting each other in exhibition fights. Just be honest about the rules. Got it. Yeah, that's a fair point too. The fact that they're wearing the heavier gloves and the way it's structured, and then they're saying it's a professional fight, but it's a bit modified. I definitely see your complaint there. Okay. Well, that is Jake versus Mike Tyson. We got one topic to end on. Now, this was pretty funny. So Alex Pereira, after the fight, immediately tweeted out that he wanted to move down and move back down to middleweight and challenge Dricus. I'll tell you what Dricus' response was in a second. What do you think about this idea?
Dricus talks about moving up. I mean,
yes.
I think Alex is going to be a little too precise for him, to be honest. But with that pressure, you never know. Alex is just so much bigger than Adesanya. I know Adesanya beat Alex, knocked him out. But man, I don't know. Hey, you know what? I'm gonna do one better. Every time I go against Dricus, he wins every single time. So I'm taking Dricus with the pressure. I'm done betting against this guy. The only person that's gonna beat Dricus is Sean because he's my teammate. I'm not betting against Dricus anymore. He has this unorthodox, wonky style that's forward pressure all the time. I've lost so much money betting against him. I'm done betting against him. Dricus Beats Pereira.
Dude, Dricus is such a mystery. But there's also something to say, would you agree, that the more Dricus fights and the more footage there is on him and the more tape on him, he's going to get more and more potentially vulnerable to a defeat, right? So now he's going to go up. He's going to fight Strickland. He's probably going to fight the winner of Hamzat versus Whitaker at some point. There's going to be more and more fights. Does that sway you at all? By the time he eventually would move up to fight Pereira, it's going to be in like 3 fights. Does that added footage give his opponent a big advantage, Pereira an advantage, or not really?
I don't think so. I mean, he will have tendencies, of course, but I mean, he's still evolving with the game. He's still learning. He's still changing. He doesn't look the exact same every fight. With that being said, having an unorthodox style is very hard to go against. In wrestling, we always say it's sometimes harder to wrestle somebody that doesn't know how to wrestle. And I know this sounds stupid, but
No,
think of
yeah.
the deeper meaning to it. It's harder to wrestle somebody that doesn't know how to wrestle properly than it does to wrestle somebody that knows how, because you know what to expect. Whether you can defend it or not is one thing, but when you got guys doing goofy shit and they're fucking all over the place, it can be relatively unpredictable and really tough to deal with. And I think that's what Dricus brings to the table.
Yeah, it's kind of what you'll see that in poker. Sometimes somebody will show up at a
Yes,
poker tournament.
absolutely. That's
Yeah,
that's a better analogy than
yeah.
somebody that doesn't know how to wrestle. But yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we're talking about is sometimes if you ever go to a poker tournament and you might have some guy who's never played poker before and he rolls in and like he doesn't even know what good hands are, when he should whatever, I don't know, call for another card or do different, take different tactics. So people are very thrown off. Is he bluffing? And he might think he's got a great hand, but he's got a terrible hand. So everything is off and wonky and people can't read you whatever. So this is kind of a similar idea when somebody's awkward or even inexperienced, as Justin's saying. The style is so unpredictable that it can be difficult to handle.
Absolutely.
We've also got some other comments here. Pereira 205, Dricus 185. Hold on. Pereira chin at middleweight. That's the thing, right? That's what people are saying. Why he might have gotten knocked out by Izzy is because he was so massively dehydrated. I mean, in his last lightweight fight, I think after the weigh-ins, he weighed in at like 240 or 245. It's insane.
Wow.
So he was cutting an incredible amount of weight. If by the way, you're picking Dricus. If Dricus moves up and fights Pereira, I think Pereira's going to do it. I think Pereira takes him down. I think he hits harder. I think he is more precise. I think his striking style is just going to be more difficult for Dricus to handle. And I think by the time they fight as well, as good as Pereira's takedown defense is now, I think it's going to be way better. I think it's still expanding and growing exponentially. So I think once again, the longer Dricus waits to fight Pereira, the more difficult it's going to be. And I think when they do fight, it's going to favor him. Oh, we haven't even talked about Pereira's next fight. Okay, hold on, stop.
Oh, I'm not even excited about it.
I didn't even but we got to talk about it. I didn't even add this to the list and I totally forgot, guys. We got to talk about this before we end. Here, let me put this up here on the thing. It was announced that Pereira is fighting Khalil Rountree. I think he's ranked number 8 or 9 in the UFC in that division. This is insane. People were so upset about this. He just is coming off a drug suspension and is getting slotted back into a title shot. Meanwhile, Ankalaev is I can't remember who he's fighting. He's fighting the guy who Yuri beat. I can't remember his name. But Ankalaev is matched up with somebody else. I mean, this what do you make of this? Like, were you upset? Because it's just such a bizarre fight. And I think everybody's like, obviously they're feeding Pereira a really good matchup. He's feeding him another kickboxer who he's just better than. Like, what do you think?
I don't really understand it. There's a lot of things the UFC does that I don't understand. I think that when Rountree comes back, that he should, where's Jamal Hill? Where's my guy Jamal Hill? Like he was supposed to fight Rountree like for contendership. To the aspect of Jamal and I being boys, yeah, that fucking sucks. The UFC does some weird shit sometimes, and I don't know why. And I know there's a reason, and I know there's probably some kind of story they want to put together. Maybe they just want another title defense to solidify him as because again, yeah, Rountree is a great striker, but Pereira is one of the best in the world. And hey, but with that being said, a striker's delight. I mean, it's going to be an exciting fight. Rountree goes to Thailand and trains in Thailand a lot on his kickboxing. So don't count this guy out, man. Like any one punch can land. Any one punch can land. I do favor Pereira in this fight significantly, but it's going to be a fun fight. It's going to be a fun fight to watch. I think someone's getting knocked out.
For sure. But what I want to know is, do you think this hurts the credibility of MMA, of basically what's going on in the UFC being a sport? Meaning, obviously, we know it's part entertainment, part sport. But as a fan, and I think a lot of fans would agree with me, I want there to be legitimacy to it. I want it to ultimately be a contest of the best versus the best, and the outcome shows us who's the greatest fighter and the greatest athlete in this realm. It's tough when we start just seeing these crazy matchups that don't really make sense, and they're for a title, right? So does this bother you that it in the sense that, hey, this kind of goes against the credibility of this being a legitimate sport?
Yeah, absolutely, man. It doesn't look good for the sport. I absolutely, and people talk about this all the time. I was actually talking to a friend of mine, a UFC diehard, Jeremiah Self, out in Oklahoma, one of my sponsors, Self Equipment, that he's almost getting sick of watching the UFC because
Mm,
it feels so scripted now, and not that the fights are scripted because they're not scripting the fights, but
no,
they're putting people in position that they want to win. They're putting people in position that, all right, they don't guarantee he's going to win, but they're giving him the best opportunity to win.
right.
And you know what I mean? And it could be for whatever reason, whether it's sales, whether it's popularity, whether it's this, whether it's that. And unfortunately, like and I agree with him, man. It's like this matchup doesn't make any sense. He goes from, facing Jamal Hill, my Michigan boy Jamal Hill, to being suspended for drugs to a title shot. It just doesn't make sense. And I'm on Rountree's side. He was forthcoming about his drug use or whatever it was. But I don't think that's good enough to warrant a title shot right after his suspension is up.
No, certainly not. It's bananas. And I mean, look, yes, we seen this before. We have, like, we saw it with Sean O'Malley versus Chito Vera, right? People said that fight didn't make sense. There was other people in line, but I could understand that fight because there was a story there. Chito Vera was the one guy that had beaten Sean O'Malley, so why not give him that rematch? Now, was it necessarily done in the vein of like having it be a meritocracy? Definitely not. Okay, but we could justify it. The problem with this one is there's no story, there's no it makes no sense. So this is one where I'm kind of confused as to how they're going to justify it and even hype it up. Now, yes, will the fight be amazing? Yes. Do I want to see Pereira be dominant and get another win? I actually do. So in that respect, that's the only place where I love seeing dominant champions. I love seeing people achieve what's seemingly impossible. He's going to be doing that with these multiple title defenses, coming in late in the game as a kickboxer. Amazing story, incredible. But then we get to a point where it's like, come on, like you're just clearly trying to push that, and it feels a little awkward. It feels a little almost slimy. That being said, it is what it is. We can't change it. It's been announced. So I guess we'll see what happens with the outcome. And again, somebody mentioned too, don't count Khalil out. Wait, who said that? Yeah, Anakin said, don't count out Rountree. Yeah, fair. I mean, look, it's going to be a crazy striking fight. Rountree's got amazing striking. We'll see. We'll see how the styles match up. I don't know. Maybe he will have an advantage against Pereira when they get in there, but I'm not exactly sure. Okay, we'll go to a couple more comments before we wrap up. Undeserved. That's my main problem with it. Sure. Yes, Pern says it's a fan friendly fight. 100%. Before and then let's see. Before Saturday, I'd agree with you, Lane, but now I'm not so sure. I'm not sure what that is in response to. It says a title shot for Khalil is insane. Yeah. So I think they're just talking about that in general. So I guess we will see what happens. Last but not least, we got Celine saying she's watching us from Tunisia. What's up what's up to Tunisia and what's up out there? I've never been out there. So thank you for joining and jumping on despite being all the way in Tunisia. Very cool. All right, guys, that is it for our Monday show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, please click that like button. If you want to see more and join along with our journey, make sure to click subscribe. We're having a blast making more and more content. So yeah, join along. We'd love to have you. And that
And
is
thanks
it.
for all the interaction, guys. Appreciate all the comments, everything. I love that shit. Answering all your questions and stuff. That's fucking great. So really appreciate you guys forthcoming with all the comments and your thoughts.
And Lane, by the way, I think might be new. So Lane, welcome. You're giving a lot of feedback. I want to post one more comment from Lane. Actually, it's a good one. Alex had to defend 4 times, especially considering Magomed fighting next card. Wait, I'm not sure exactly what you mean there, but saying that Rountree has an undeserved title shot. Yeah, sure. And again, I don't even think it's about like, hey, we love Khalil Rountree. I think it's just, hey, this is going to be the best matchup we can think of. Let's get Alex one more title defense. Let's really bolster him. Maybe they want to give him more time to work on his takedown defense. I don't know. Whatever it is happening. Let's see. Anyways, thank you guys so much for joining, and we will see you in the next episode. Take it easy.